Every season we get new gear, and every season there is a piece that someone claims is the new meta. This season it's the new Equalizer chest piece, but the big question is, does it actually make the only solo build you need in the Division 2 better, or not? Let's have a look at the Equalizer chest piece. There are two things that make it so good. Firstly, it has some great brand set bonuses. 5% rate of fire is a straight DPS buff, which doesn't suffer from diminishing returns unlike other weapon damage buffs. 20% assault rifle damage on the 2-piece bonus is also great for AR builds. And a 3-piece bonus of 50% magazine size will increase your sustained DPS and is useful in harder content. The second thing is the talent it comes with, Perfect Obliterate. Obliterate has always been a good talent even after it was nerfed, delivering 20% total weapon damage for 10 seconds after 20 critical hits. The perfect version improves this to 24% total weapon damage. Now total weapon damage is multiplicative, so it's a good stat for any DPS build. And if you don't know what I mean by multiplicative damage, then please do check out this video next. It is a straightforward guide to how weapon damage is calculated in the Division 2 that will help you get the most out of your builds. Getting your hands on the new Equalizer with the right rolls is actually very simple. Targeted loot. Set this to the new Unit Alloys brand set. There are 3 choices for where to farm for the chest piece: Retaliation, Summit, or Countdown. By far and away the best farm is Countdown due to the high drop rate of gear, particularly in the final phase. Retaliation is second and the drop rate is not bad, but Countdown is the way to go. I got the chest piece with critical hit chance and critical hit damage rolls on my first Countdown run. Before we get into the new build, a reminder of the original. I cover everything about the build, including where to farm for gear in the original video, but here are the highlights. 3 pieces of Gilligar for the armor, health and armor regen, including the chill out mask so I can run 2 protection from elite mods on it. The Memento backpack for its all round awesomeness. Contractor's gloves for LMG weapon damage and damage to armor. And 1 piece of improvised gear for the extra mod slot. The build is rounded out with the Pestilence, my favourite weapon in the game and one of the best exotics. The build runs 5 protection from elite mods and the survivalist specialisation for 70% damage reduction, which lets me run glass cannon for the amplified damage. For skills I run the Reviver Hive and a Striker drone. For some content though, I swap the drone out for an assault turret, which works better in enclosed areas. There are 2 critical criteria that I don't want to change with this build. The new build needs to deal at least as much damage as the original. And because I use it for the hardest solo content in the game, it needs to be just as tanky as it currently is against elite enemies. Let's look at damage first. Straight off the bat, Perfect Obliterate is clearly going to deal less damage because it only buffs our weapon damage by 24% compared to Glass Cannon's 25% buff. But 1% is not that much difference, right? Well, no. Because Obliterate increases total weapon damage, while Glass Cannon amplifies all the damage I deal from all sources. So while Obliterate will buff weapon damage and my Pestilence ticks, it's not buff the damage that my skills do, or my specialisation weapon, or grenades, or status effects, or environmental damage like explosive barrels. That is a whole lot of damage that is being lost, and that's only part of it. Because of course, to get the full 24% buff, you need to build up stacks, whereas Glass Cannon buffs from the very first shot. This takes no time at all in the range, even with a low critical hit chance build like this one. But in legendary missions, getting it up and keeping it up is a little different. Take the opening section of DUA for example. I went through and analysed all the time that Obliterate was at max stacks, and when it was not. And what I found that was I was getting the max benefit for only 61% of the time. All of this led me to the conclusion that just slapping the Equalizer chest piece onto the build doesn't hit the criteria I'm looking for. But to work out what to keep and what to change, I need to look at the survivability of the builds, particularly versus elites. The original build ran 70% protection from elites, so if an elite deals 100,000 damage per shot, then I'd be taking 30,000 damage. Except of course, I'm running glass cannon on that build, and this amplifies any incoming damage by 50%, which would increase the per shot damage from that hypothetical elite to 45,000. So to have the same level of survivability, I need to aim for about 55% protection from elites. The first way I looked at was by just changing out my improvised knee pads for one piece of Guard, so that I retained the 3 set armor regen bonus from that brand set. This set me at 58% protection from elites. The problem with this version of the build is that, as we just looked at, I'm losing damage output by using Perfect Obliterate over Glass Cannon. To bump up my damage output, there were 2 options that I looked at. But before that, something odd really happened while I was testing this version of the build that was surprising to me, and I think it will be to you as well. I expected when jumping between the builds to feel a lot less squishy against non-elites when using the build with Perfect Obliterate, but I didn't. I knew I was taking an extra 50% damage with the original build, but it just didn't feel like it. So I ran a little experiment. I found a solo mob and encouraged it to attack me. Then I analysed the footage to see how long it took to wipe out my 1.7 million armour when using the Perfect Obliterate build. Roughly 3.1 seconds, which is about 550,000 DPS. With Glass Cannon, the time to crack my armour reduces to around 2.3 seconds. But let's get real, as a solo player, I don't go down to one non-elite on their own. It is typically a group, and with 2 non-elites shooting me, my armor is going to crack in 1.6 seconds with Perfect Obliterate and around 1.1 seconds with Glass Cannon. Now I don't know about you, but half a second is not big enough to really notice the difference. Here is what half a second feels like. And that is why running Glass Cannon is not as noticeably squishier as I thought it would be. So I needed to bump up my damage output to make running the Equalizer chest piece worth it. There are 2 ways that I looked at for this. Firstly, running one piece of Seska for the additional critical hit chance. This has 2 benefits. The obvious, that I will deal more critical hit damage. But let's be honest, unless you're running the Iron Lung LMG, which comes with great critical hit mods, LMG builds are not about the critical hit damage. Pestilence has no critical hit mods on it, and the build is capping out at 81% critical hit damage. And the second is that I will get to max Obliterate stacks quicker. Here is a comparison between the build without Seska and one with Seska. The difference is only 1 second. And on top of that, extra critical hit chance does nothing for my Pestilence stacks, skill damage, specialization, and so on. So while one piece of Seska absolutely does give my damage output a bump and is the best for burst weapon damage, I went with something different. Fox's Prayer, which comes with 8% damage to targets out of cover, and this damage buff applies to all damage sources in the same way that Glass Cannon does. Comparing the damage output between the 2 builds, excluding any memento stacks, and you can see that the Perfect Obliterate Pestilence ticks are higher. Running the stats of each build through a weapon damage calculator, and the Perfect Obliterate build outperforms the original build on non-critical hit damage, but lags ever so slightly on critical hit damage due to the original build having 12% extra critical hit damage. But the Perfect Obliterate build has that 5% extra rate of fire, resulting in a very nice uplift in my burst damage. In order to get the Fox's Prayer knee pads onto the build, I dropped 2 pieces of Guard but kept the improvised holster. By losing 2 pieces of Guard, I am losing 2% armor regeneration and 60% health, which equates to around 200,000 health. To make up for this lost armor regeneration, I've swapped out the Survivalist specialization for Gunners, which comes with some great buffs for LMGs and 10% armor on kill, which I think is a good trade. This leaves me with 60% protection from elites, so 5% more than the effective amount the original build had. Couple this with the 50% lower damage taken from non-elites, and the build still hits that criteria of maintaining at least the same survivability despite the lower health pool. But there was one big question that I needed to answer before we finish this video. To answer that question, I ran the first 9 sections of Legendary DUA using both builds so I could compare how quickly I could clear it with them. The results were, to say the least, surprising. Now, there were times during each run that I was screwed by enemies who hid behind cover or refused to push when I wanted them to. To even this out, I stripped out sections 2 and 7 and, drumroll please, the original build cleared the content 2.5 seconds quicker than the Perfect Obliterate build. So I'm going to stick with my original build, but I think the Perfect Obliterate build is easier to run, particularly for newer players who may be struggling with positioning. It is also a better option when the incoming damage goes off the chart, like in the final boss arena of the Pact Climax mission, so swapping to it at the right time is going to make that content much easier. And if you are struggling with the Climax mission or Legendary DUA, check out my comprehensive guides on them here.